She is.
Hello.
Hello. I am so sorry. Usually I am very professional and on time and look at you looking all beautiful. That was my plan. I'm in soccer gear. Sorry.
I'm in yesterday's shirt. So I was looking around and I'm like, I told my husband, I'm gonna put on yesterday's shirt. Don't judge. He's like, I won't. He goes, I think I'll do it too. And I was like, gross.
Why would you do that? Why is that? Why is it always grosser when they do stuff like that? It just is. It just is. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Sarah. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's kind of exciting. Like, you friend somebody, you're mutuals. You see each other's stuff, but like to talk in person doesn't really happen. You feel like you do.
I know. I'm finding with this little interview thing that that's the part I really enjoy. Because you're right. Like we share stuff and you feel like you start to know each other, but you don't really have a conversation where you really talk. And I'm enjoying this, like just having a wine down with Grace. And I don't even have wine. I have iced tea, but there you go.
I can see my wine. And also it's 11 here. So,
well, it is afternoon here. So that's helpful, but no judgment here, girl. So for those of you who don't know, Sarah's here on TikTok. She tells, well, I'll ask you questions. So I think most people know this, but you are former LDS or Mormon, correct?
Yes.
And how long has it been since you left the church?
This year was 10 years officially. We resigned the church in 2014, and you have to do a resignation process in the LDS church to get off of there. If you don't want them to bother you anymore, you have to literally like send them a letter resigning your membership. Now they require it to be what's not a certified letter. They require it to be a notarized form.
Really?
Yeah. So we did that in April 2014. I stopped going in 2013. I took a break because I was like, hey, I don't think I'm doing this right. My mental health is a mess, so I need to take a break and figure out what I'm doing wrong. And then taking the break helped me know, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong. This is just not good for my mental health. So
interesting. So you said if you want them to leave you alone. So what do they do if you don't send in that letter?
So let's say that like it's very efficient records keeping system. It's very well done, right? And so if you move, they will find wherever you move to. They'll reach out to your family so that they can send your records to your new congregation, because congregations are all about where you live. There are boundaries and you have to go to the one you're assigned to. And so they'll investigate in order to get your records to the correct bishop. And then that ward, it'll depend ward to ward, but they'll do what they call reactivation efforts. Like they'll send people to try to get you to come back to church. And, or you'll get just any official things that they're sending out to everyone that's on the list. If you have children, they'll be getting invitations to this activity, that activity, even if you've never been, even if you haven't been in the church for like 20 years, that ward is still going to make that effort to try to get you to come back. So resigning is a way to get that to stop. But even then, even if you resign, family members can send the missionaries to your house.
So in the past 10 years, have people still shown up at your house?
Not at mine. Well, they've shown up for my kids. My kids have not resigned yet. And that's just a matter of not thinking about it until they'll get a letter or something. And it's kind of funny, like the missionaries, I've always been ready and I'm never going to be mean to them. They're 18, 19, 20 years old. But I had a plan, which was going to be, can I get you some water? And then I was going to like hold up my phone. Do you need to call your mom? Because until the last several years, they could not call their families.
What?
They could only call their families on Mother's Day and Christmas. And otherwise it was letters and emails only. Now they get to call their families once a week. And so now I wouldn't need to say, do you need to call your mom? But I always felt like there are stories about missionaries who are having major mental health crises, but they have to talk to their mission president and get permission to like see somebody. And I think the church is doing better with mental health and missionaries now. But before it was a struggle, or there would be health needs and this person is not getting to a doctor because there's this man saying, buck up. And so to me as a mom, you know, I'm just like, that kid needs to call his mom and she needs to raise a fuss to get that child medical needs. And so, yeah, anyway, but yeah, I was member for 36 years.
So, okay, quick question. I didn't mean to dive into all this, but this is it's fascinating to me. So I'm trying to see what the questions are without glaring my glasses. My glasses glare on this. I want Sarah and Dave from Pop Psych to collaborate. Oh, that would be fun. I've talked to Pop Psych. That would be an interesting collab because you're both therapists, which was the next thing I was going to say about you is you're also a licensed therapist, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm a clinical mental health counselor.
It makes your view of Sister Wives quite interesting.
Yeah. And it's funny because I wasn't making Sister Wives content. And in 2022, I flew to Florida for a week to do a training on a specific type of therapy. And the episode with Gabe not getting the happy birthday was aired, you know, and I'm there in my Airbnb. I'm so mad, you know, and I just made a little bit of a rant video about the fact that if Cody's calling Gabe in October, then he didn't call Gabe in January to find out what COVID was like. Like, why did it take until Cody got it? And then I woke up to like 500 more followers and I just was like, and I made a video later that day or like during a break at my training and said, I'm not a Sister Wives creator. Like, here's these guys and these guys, like, go follow them. Like, you know, you're going to be disappointed if you're here for Sister Wives content. But I happened in that video to say, but I will say it's been really interesting to watch as an ex-Mormon and as a domestic violence therapist, you know, to have those two different perspectives while I'm watching. And then there were people that were like, please make Sister Wives content from those perspectives. And, you know, and then it's gone crazy from there. It's been fun. And I also have to walk very fine lines, you know, because there are people who come into the comments and say, you know, what do you think happened to them to cause them to think this way? Or what, you know, the question I always get is, do you think Cody is a narcissist? And the response is always, and I've made two separate videos of, you're never going to hear me weigh in on that.
Right.
You know, I
it's
can't.
Too close to diagnosing,
yeah.
Right?
Say that again.
It's too close to diagnosing.
Right. Yeah. And I'm not, you know, it's, you know, I can't diagnose people that I have not evaluated. And even when we're evaluating people, sometimes, you know, in that evaluation time, we're still not sure, you know, and we're going to like, okay, here's a provisional diagnosis or here's a rule out. Like maybe it's this, but I got to learn more about this person. And, you know, so to just see somebody on TV and think that I know what's going on, you know, but also it's not just that. It's like, I don't have consent to be making that kind of a determination about someone's, you know, somebody comes into me in my office, they want that survey, they're consenting to be saying, here's what I think. And sometimes when I say, here's the diagnosis I'm giving you, that's painful. Sure. Sometimes it can be even scary, you know, to hear words that, you know, especially words that are I don't know what the word I'm trying to think of is, you know, but like, for instance, the word psychotic. Psychotic refers to very specific symptoms, but we will call each other psychotic in a very mean way, you know, like, oh, you're a serial killer. And so if you tell someone, I'm sorry, I have to diagnose you with depression, major depressive disorder with psychotic features, you got to really explain. And then there's that relationship where I can help them understand and not feel stigma. And so if I'm sitting on TikTok and saying Cody Brown has this diagnosis, I don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
I'm probably not correct. You know?
Yeah. I get that. Well, I have to say that's how I stumbled upon your page. And I, like everybody else, quickly loved that combination of the fact that as a therapist, you do have some insight there. And although you weren't part of the polygamous lifestyle or the AUB, you know well the Mormon church and kind of where that goes. I have a question about this missionary thing because, so I was raised Mennonite. I don't know if you know that about me or not. I still live in a Mennonite community. And my grandfather was raised in an Amish community. So that's kind of my background. So when I hear the word missionary as a Mennonite, that usually means you're going to Haiti, to Africa, to Guatemala, to somewhere, and sharing the gospel. And I always thought when these men went on a mission trip, it meant they were going somewhere. Are you telling me the young men that I see walking around knocking on doors, that's their mission?
Yes, that's a missionary. Like their mission is to convert people, to go out and, some people call, it's an unpaid sales force for the church, but it's not even unpaid. It's they pay to go on their own missions for 2 years and basically teach about the LDS church and see if they want to join and try to baptize people and get them to come to church.
I had no idea that's what that was. I for some reason had them like out in a desert somewhere doing all this soul searching, and that's interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah, and there's a comment there that says they do go to different countries, and it's just you get sent where you're sent. So there are people that that will go out to the desert, right? There are people that my younger sister went to Los Angeles. That was from Texas. Her mission was in Los Angeles, but they'll go all over the world that will allow them to come in, and then that's where they spend, there'll be an area that they're going to spend their 2 years, 18 months if you're a woman, but 2 years if you're a man.
That is fascinating. I had no idea that, and I'm pretty sure I just saw two of them yesterday. I was in a parking lot and there was these two young men walking through a parking lot looking extremely hot, carrying what appeared to be two books that looked like they would have been some kind of religious books. And they both had on long sleeve button up shirts, real clean cut. And they were walking around looking for people getting in their cars and trying to make conversation. And I promptly skirted around the back of my car and jumped in because I just had no desire to, stop and chat for a while. But which I have a question, and I hope if I ask anything that you're not comfortable with, please just decline, because that's fine. I tend to be a verbal, and then I get myself in trouble. So if you say, you know what, I'd rather not answer that, that's quite okay. And I will not take that personally at all if I cross a boundary. This garment thing. So when you go back and you watch Sister Wives, the earlier episodes, do you think these women are wearing garments in those early episodes?
So I do, and I think the AUB garment is different from the mainstream LDS garment. I think it's got a longer, because you notice in the earlier seasons, they're at a 3/4 sleeve all the time.
All the time, yes.
And I believe there was, I feel like way back in the day, because I started watching Sister Wives when it first came out, and I watched a few seasons, and then I got bored with it. So I just stopped watching. And then I was on TikTok, and Danielle, the SC realtor, was putting on the clown makeup, talking, love should be divided, or multiplied, not divided. And I think maybe she had ramen on her head. And then it was like, oh, something's changed. I should check back in, but I do think, because I think they were completely faithful in their church at the time. And I do believe the AUB has a similar kind of undergarment, but I think it's different. With the LDS church, it was like a cap sleeve. So you could wear short sleeves, or cap sleeve shirts. But yeah, and they all came from Joseph Smith, who kind of instituted, and in Joseph Smith's time, it was to the neck and to the wrists and to the ankles. and then slowly over time, it's because fashions change. And, what the church will say, the LDS church will say is, we don't want our members to be, put up for ridicule, and so then they would adjust the garment with the time. And now I'm hearing that like the bottoms of garments have gotten significantly shorter. And, it used to be that was supposed to go to the top over your kneecap. It was supposed to stop there. And then I knew women who would like buy petites, even though they were like 5'9", and so that they could wear shorts. And I was very judgmental of them. I was a judgmental Mormon. I'm sad to think about that, but now they're so much shorter but there was no announcement. It's just, I saw a TikTok where someone was like, here's my old ones and here's my new ones.
Wow.
And they're so different. And it's obviously someone who doesn't mind sharing that. So maybe is on their way out of the church. I don't know, but.
Well, I was the Mennonite kid that we weren't allowed to wear pants unless we were unless it was for modesty or for, like if it was snowing and we were playing in the snow, we would have like old jeans that we could, that mom would get at like Goodwill or something. And I was the kid that when I took driver's ed, it was at a public school, and I'll never forget it. It was the first time I had ever done this. And I wore a very Pentecostal, I'm going to say, looking skirt. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to offend any Pentecostals, but you know what I mean. The buttons up the front and the flared, because it was full. And then I wore jeans underneath and I rolled them up. And of course I had my covering on, and it was at a public school, and mom took me there. It was in the evening from like 7 to 10, and she dropped me off. And I remember opening the door and getting out, and she got back in the car, and I stood. I had taken a real big bag because I told her we had to take a notebook. And I waited for her car to pull away, and I reached up and took the pins out, snatched the covering off, and took my skirt off and rolled my jeans down and went in to take driver's ed because I didn't want to be embarrassed going in and looking so incredibly different as a 16-year-old. It was bad enough that my hair was very, very long and pulled up in a ponytail and all the things. But then I quickly realized my error in judgment, because that course was for like 2 months, once a week. Yeah. And now I was like, wait, how am I going to pull this off? So whenever I hear them talk about garments, my mind immediately goes back to that, because I was trying to hide jeans underneath my clothes. I look at these women who started, Mary and Janelle and Christine and Robin, and then I remember them talking about modesty a lot in those first seasons. Yeah. And I don't know where those garments stopped. Like, I'd love to know kind of when they stopped that.
Yeah, and I know that there's talk about that they were excommunicated from their church, and Punk Rock Polygamous, I can't remember, he weighed in, but I think he weighed in that he didn't think that had actually happened, But obviously, you're seeing the sneak peek for this week. Cody is saying some negative things about his church. And I heard, when he did that podcast interview, the Mormonism Live podcast interview, he went into kind of in depth about how he doesn't believe anymore. And, he even, I think, stole the History in 60, he said, culture. And I'm like, dude, give her credit right now. Give her credit right now. Anyway, but he really is thinking about them differently, but I don't know like the timeline on that. I think what the rumor is after the catfishing. And so we had this nationally known, here are members of our church, and she's, had an emotional affair or whatever you want to call that. And so then the church saying, we're going to cut ties with you guys because you're making us look bad. That's kind of the rumor that goes around. And so then I would think, well, if they felt like they were excommunicated, and if you're excommunicated as an LDS person, I believe you are asked to stop wearing your garments.
Oh, because they are considered like holy, right?
Yeah. And I want to say I could be wrong about that, but I think that you are asked to not wear them. And it's weird. I should know because my father was excommunicated. So. But I don't know.
Well, I was interested in the sneak peek. I actually wanted to talk to you about that. I found it interesting that Cody was so offended that Mary wanted to go get a release. And I found it interesting that Mary was actually interested in getting a release. What are your thoughts on that?
It's one of those hypocritical things because when Christine was leaving, he talks about, oh, she just said she can just leave, and then in the knife and the kidneys conversation, you have Robin saying there's a process, that you're supposed to go and ask for a release. And Cody's like, yeah. And so it's like, okay, again, here's Mary doing things by the book, things that he's acted as if Christine should have done. And then he's upset about it. I don't know. I wonder about how much of it is just his ego because he didn't want to go public with the fact that they'd broken up, and I guess that was like at least for a year or more after she said, let's tell everybody. And so I guess to me, it looks like another situation, even though it feels like, oh, you're going to go ask these men to designate you not married, like, is that really taking your power back? But it really seems like she still believes at this point.
Well, and that was my next question. I keep asking Mary to sit down and talk to me. And she won't do it. Mary, if you're listening to this, sit down, talk to me. I don't want to ask her the NDA things, but those kind of questions I would love to ask her. Where is she at in her spiritual walk? Does she still hold to some of that? It feels to me like maybe she does. But then she turns around last week and has her, just call me the bleep queen, which was absolutely hysterical. And I loved it. I was like, I am so here for this Mary. And I'm sure that really irritates him. And I think
I don't know exactly when they I know that when they filmed the talking heads, that's later.
Right.
They're talking because you can see like changes in weight and changes, and it's like, I listened to a recent podcast interview with her. And so I don't think she believes at all in the religion anymore.
Okay.
But I think obviously like if she says, I'm going to go to Salt Lake and get a release, and she's talking about like, I don't want to be married to this guy in the eternities. Right. Then at that point, and that's one of the hard things with the show being so far behind.
Yeah.
Is Mary today has said, I'm never going to be a polygamist again, never going to happen. Mary at that point, who knows? I don't know if she would have been open to it. Because I'm imagining, if it's like the LDS church, which it is in a lot of ways, then she wouldn't have been able to get married into another polygamous family without that release from the church elders. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's another, very public. I talked in one video about the concept of a public versus a private divorce. And so whenever you divorce, there are two divorces. So there's the private divorce that's between the two people who are getting divorced, Okay. But then there is the public divorce, and that is people starting to take sides when you realize, oh, I'm no longer going to be closer to my in-laws, in tough divorces. Just a second. Can you bring me my water? I was trying to I was doing this at him off screen, and it doesn't mean water.
He didn't get it, did he?
And he's got his coffee. So he's like holding up his coffee, like, do you want me to get your coffee? And I'm thinking, sure. Neither. Anyway, but both divorces are painful. It's basically two sides of the same divorce.
Yeah.
Because it's super painful to unravel, this life that you've had.
Yeah. Yesterday, my page kind of had this, a lot of people were commenting. I was talking about, sorry, I'm really trying to keep these from glaring. This whole thing with Christine filing for custody of Truly and back child support and all that. And people were coming into my comment section and saying, you know, yeah, I mean, people are very excited that she's doing it, as am I. But I made a video saying this is a big deal, not only for Cody, but for Christine, because she has said for years and years and years of her fear of anything to do with government. Because as I understand it, that is very much a part of your religion, is staying away from that for multiple reasons. And Christine has been very open talking about that in the past. And people kept coming into my comment section and saying, no, she left Cody, so there's nothing to be afraid of anymore. And I tried to do a video response back saying and this is just my opinion, because being raised Mennonite, that I relate to a lot, because we were kind of raised not to be afraid of government, but not to be involved either. There was very much a separation of church and state, and, you know, not asking for any kind of government handout. You never wanted to talk to a social worker. Counselors were kind of not a thing. Now they are now, but when I was a little girl, you know, you didn't go see a counselor, you went and saw the pastor. And so, you know, for me, as I got older, those things that are drilled into you don't just disappear simply because you're not in the situation anymore. So the first time I went in a liquor store, I was fairly certain that, you know, hell was just going to open up and suck me in because I had dared to cross over the line. And so my thought process was, I think that for Christine, this probably was a really big step to actually file that. And I don't know, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Yeah. And I mean, if we're talking about the laws itself, like she wouldn't be in any danger now that they've split, right? But I 100% agree. Like what you grow up feeling and those messages, even when as an adult you can look and go, that's not logical. You know, there's a part of you where that hangs on to that. And I think if you notice, Christine is the one that's the most scared throughout the whole show of the government. And part of that is because, I mean, you've got Mary's parents didn't become polygamous till after she was born. Now she was raised, all that she can remember is the AUB. But Cody went on a mission for the mainstream LDS church. Like he was an adult before he went. Janelle was raised in the mainstream LDS church. So they never experienced what things that Christine's family experienced, you know, and I'm going to say, I don't think the Browns were ever in any danger of Cody getting ripped away from their family. Like there were laws in Utah that were not being enforced unless there was, you know,
Abuse or something
going on and fraud. So I feel like they did ramp that up for the show and made it seem like it was worse than it was. However, I do know that Christine comes from a family that started out in the FLDS church. The AUB broke off from that. And in the 50s, in the 1950s, there were raids and men were put in prison and kids were ripped from their parents. And, you know, that really did happen, the Short Creek raid. And so, you know, she wouldn't have been around then, but that story would have been told, you know, and times when her father had to go into hiding or her grandfather had to go into hiding. And so, you know, I think, I mean, you could see when they were going to go talk to the legislature and she just starts crying and is terrified to go back to Utah. I think that's really real. And I think, yeah, it is. If you grow up in a society where you're going to try not to use the government, you know, you're trying to stay away and handle things on your own, then yeah, that might be difficult for her to go, okay, I'm going to go to court. I'm going to engage the Office of Recovery Services in Utah to open a child support case, you know. And at the same time, it's like, I believe that they were on food stamps and probably Medicaid. So it's like, well, they were able, you know, there's a lot of back and forth there. But I will say, like, it's always very interesting. And I cannot remember if you say Darger or Darger, but this family, this man that has the 3 wives, his 2 of them are sisters, twin sisters. It was interesting because when they came on the screen, I was like, oh, hey, I know her. And I don't know her. Like, I don't even know which of the twins it was. I can't remember. But, you know, one of his wives actually came to the domestic violence conference that I'm a part of every year. And
Wow.
she was on a panel talking about the different cultural needs and what, you know, and so there were, Hispanic therapists, there were all these people saying, okay, in this community, here's what you need to know. And so she was there representing the polygamous community, or just basically saying, here's what you need to know if you're going to
Go there.
be working on a domestic violence case in this. But that one of the reasons she was there is because she actually works really hard to root out domestic violence in polygamous families. And so then it's another one of the reasons where I'm like, okay, here's this woman just openly polygamist, you know.
But going to this conference.
Yeah, openly polygamist, openly working with different agencies, you know, like
Wow.
openly working in her community to reduce stigma so that they can go and get help and they'll get a protective order if they need it and all that kind of stuff. And so then it's just kind of like, how scared were they? I don't know. You know.
Well, somebody asked the question, if you think it really wasn't the fear of Cody being removed from the family, why do you think they left like they did? I know what my thoughts are. I think it was purely TLC motivated, and it was time Cody wanted to move because Cody moves every 5 years.
Yeah. I first and foremost, I always am like, you have a house that accommodates 3 wives and 3 families, and you've just brought in a 4th, you know, and I would look at like the land the house is on, you know, just looking and going, how do you add on? What are you going to do with this 4th wife? And so it was like already, you know, the setup didn't really work
Anymore.
for them.
Yeah.
And they were, you know, there was an investigation open. Somebody called in a complaint. And I could see just going, we don't need this, you know, we don't need this stress in our lives. But yeah, having watched Cody move, have you heard how many times they moved?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. Yeah. Somebody said, excuse me, because Christine's family was considered royalty, do you think that made them more of a target? I personally think it made them less of a target.
Yeah, I don't know how much non-AUB people care. Like,
Yeah.
what's the big,
Right.
like, obviously, like with the FLDS, they were going after Warren Jeffs. He was the big guy, you know, he was their prophet, but he was also he's an incredibly awful human being, you know, who was harming people.
Right.
And so, you know, there's something to be said for like leadership is going to have a bigger target on that. But the AUB itself is not really known as one of the really harmful polygamous sects. You know, we've got the FLDS, and then up in my neck of the woods, there's the Kingstons, who there can be some scary news stories about them sometimes. And, you know, and the AUB is just not one that I've seen people go, oh no, this bad, you know, they as you can see with like the Browns, they seem much more like average everyday people.
Right.
Even though, you know, when you got like Fresh King Benjamin, like that's not to say that there aren't harmful things going on, because Fresh King Benjamin, Cody's nephew, you know, talks about the labor, the child labor and the trafficking and things, you know, and having to work for nothing, you know, in a bread factory every day. And but it's yeah, there's a spectrum of harm, I guess.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can answer this question or not, but every person that I've had on that we've been talking about Sister Wives, which there's some other, I also want to talk to some people outside of Sister Wives, but that's a whole, because my page is a hot mess. I ask every single person what their thoughts are on this, and I get answers that are all over the place. You're a therapist, so I'm not asking you to diagnose, but just in your opinion, Do you see Cody and Robin's marriage lasting, or do you see this tanking?
Well, I think the thing that I always think is, gosh, that's just terrible what's happening, on the show, and yet we know they're still together. Mm-hmm. So it's like I can't really predict, because maybe I've watched and gone, oh, for sure she's, when they talk about last season about her polygamy being a deal breaker for her.
Yes.
She flat out said it, this was a deal breaker for me. And so then me as a therapist, in the way that I use the word deal breaker, and, the way we talk with clients about a deal breaker is a deal breaker.
Right.
Then I'm like, oh, wow, I wonder if she's going to leave. But then it's like, okay, but that was 2 years ago and they're still together, right. So I will say that I wouldn't want to stay with him. Acting the way that he's acting.
You're on team hate Cody with the rest of us, right?
Right. And I'll say, I'll work with clients. And I'm very, clear with even domestic violence clients who are still in the abusive relationship. And I'll tell them the first time I meet them is, you will never hear me say, you need to get out of this relationship. I'm never going to say those words, because it is not my choice. You have to do what you want to do. And and I say, now I might say, I'm very scared for you right now. I'll be very clear. I'm alarmed, but I'm not going to tell someone. And I say, one of the reasons is you don't want someone to do something because you told them to, then it might not last, or then they're not going to maybe do it for the right reasons or whatever. But the big thing is, I said, I can have a couple come in for couples counseling, and I'm thinking the first time I meet them, oh my gosh, how did you guys stay together this long? And thinking there's no way, but I'm like, what do you guys want to do? Well, we want to stay married. Okay, let's work on that. And then have that couple just blossom, right? They do the work, and then they have this healthy relationship. And I'm glad that I didn't say what I was thinking the first time I met them. I'm glad that, because when I think that, I'm just like, well, you don't know. And there have been times where someone, they come in and I'm thinking, oh, cool, you've got a great foundation here. These two are going to be fine. And then they end up deciding to divorce. And so it's like any kind of prediction is, you can base it on all sorts of things, and human beings are going to act like human beings.
Exactly.
Not always going to make sense, or you're not always going to be right.
My theory as a non-counselor, just a watcher, and you can shoot this down, but I look at it and I see Cody as being such a controlling individual, just his behavior. And, the best indicator of future behavior is past behavior. So he, in the past, has, everything is supposed to revolve around him. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't, then it's a problem. And I see Robin as being very manipulative, but she uses emotion a lot to try to manipulate situations. She comes off to me as someone who wanted to be a lot of people think she doesn't want to really be a polygamist. I think she does. I just think she wants to be the head wife. She wanted Mary's role, and she kind of used Mary to get there. But she's very manipulative. And when there's not a person for them to mutually be against, I'm not sure they're not going to turn on each other, because there's no one left to be the enemy together. So I've just said it. I'm like, I bet sooner or later those two break up. And a lot of people argue with me and don't think I'm right, but I'm sticking to it at this point.
Yeah. I've never seen, I've never agreed with this idea that, oh, Robin is a mastermind who slowly but surely got the monogamous relationships that she wanted. I've never been on that side of things, but do I think that she was looking to be the favorite? Mm-hmm. I think so. And I think the way that her mom, the things that her mom taught her are just like, how can you not become the favorite if anytime he's over at your house, you're just, fawning all over him, and you've had all of the harder stuff, the parenting stuff done.
Yeah.
housework is done and he's just coming over and you're giving him all your love and attention, and she was like, I think you can have a honeymoon forever. And the other wives are like, no, that's not. And I think any married person in America was like, no. Yeah. Even, really happily married, like I am very happily married, and we're kind of dorks, and we're, I'm like, I'm sorry, we're disgusting, just with how much we really like each other.
Right. And
it's still not the honeymoon ended, it does. That's just, there's right. chemicals involved in that, where your attachment hormones take over instead of the crazy, and so I think that she has by design done things to avoid losing that honeymoon.
Yeah.
And then she's been able to, because there were 3 other women that, could be compared against her. And I do wonder, like, okay, now that it's just the 2 of you, you guys have to have I don't want to say a real marriage, because, polyamorous relationships are real relationships, but it's like, it's going to be just the 2 of you. And there's not going to be a place for him to go if he's mad or her,
She's actually made that comment before, that it is hard for her to have him there 24/7. That was not her expectation. And I think, it's interesting you just said that, because if you look at it then from her perspective, if she is trying to create that, full-time honeymoon, that's got to be pretty dang hard when he's there 24/7 and she can't ever get him out the house.
Right. And and I can't imagine, like, just how difficult that would be, even, like, even with the other wives there, like, you got to be able to be crabby sometimes, you've got to be able to.
He's got that one down pat.
Yeah.
He knows how to be a mess. I think at the beginning, when I first started watching Sister Wives, I remember thinking, wow, this is really cool. Like, this is a family who all want to be there. And as much as I maybe don't believe in that lifestyle, I think it's, interesting that they're, from a social standpoint, that they're all making this work, and that the kids look so healthy and, everything. And now, having watched all these seasons, we see the truth behind the veil. And as somebody said in the comments, it's all starting to come out that obviously it wasn't great for all these kids, and the kids are saying the things. Yeah. And, all of us, no matter how wonderful your childhood is, I had a great upbringing, wonderful childhood, but it doesn't mean you didn't experience trauma of some kind. And so I do think we have to keep that in mind when there's that many children. Everybody's perspective is also going to be very, very different. And what was traumatic for one wasn't for another, and so on and so forth. But it's interesting to see how it's kind of just dissolved in front of everything. And I don't know, I think this leads to be an interesting season this year.
Yeah, I made a video this week. And I've made several of them, where it's just clips, lots of clips, basically. And they do really well.
Yeah.
Telling my husband, and I'm like, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to work on this, and it's going to take hours. And, he's like, okay, I'm just going to go to bed. But just going back through episodes, and there were a bunch of things that I was like, okay, I know I got this clip. The car's breaking down when they moved to Vegas, and I knew about where to find them. Yeah. But it did take hours. But I mean, seeing the old episodes and seeing definitely the agenda they had, because I ended up having the episode just on. It ran all the way through, and because I was working on something, but I was trying to find a clip of somebody talking about a polygamous marriage being like a wheel, and the husband's in the center and the spokes. That. And I couldn't find the actual quote. I don't know where it is, but I was watching the video of when all of his mothers-in-law were in town for Mother's Day.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to me to see, like, you can see the agenda of them trying to share this spiritual message. And these women are sharing, you know, their tears in their eyes, and they're talking about how important polygamy is to them, and what they see, you know, and it's like, oh wow, that's kind of inspirational.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh, I remember when the show used to do that.
Yes.
But at the same time, it's like, but Cody's still Cody. Because I know that episode I've always hated, because he makes such a freaking big deal about having to be around this many women. Yep. All of these mothers-in-law. Oh, and like looking at the camera like he does, like we're all in agreement. And I'm just like, shut up, you know? Like that's just straight misogyny. Like these women are gonna watch this episode, you know, like I get annoyed that he's like, you know, he basically makes a joke about the fact that there's probably one of them that's not his favorite, but he's not going to tell you that. And it's just like, great. So now all of these women can watch this episode and wonder if it's them.
Right.
And so it's like, you've got there's that old stuff, but underneath you still have Cody being Cody, you know, and
well, I actually had a moment. Notes to self 444. Melanie, have you talked to her at all?
No.
I did a sit down with her, and she's fascinating. Her father is the current leader of the AUB.
Oh, okay.
And she has left, and it was fascinating talking to her. And she's telling me this, and I had a moment where I felt bad for Robin, and I don't usually feel bad for Robin. But I was like, oh, man, I really kind of feel bad for Robin. She was talking about how, as sister wives, your bedroom is such a sacred place because it's the only place that it's just you and your husband. And she said, if you go back and watch, and she's not wrong, I went back and looked, when the girls, like Robin and Christine, when they had their babies on the show, you don't see the other wives just go into their bedroom. Even when Robin asked Mary to come in, Mary was very hesitant to go. And there was like knocking at the door and may I come in? And like, it was a big deal. And she said, that's why, because it's considered a very off limits place that no one goes except the husband and wife. She said, so when Cody and Robin put their house on the market, and there's this virtual tour where Robin's bedroom is on display, she said that was probably a really big deal for Robin to have pictures of her bedroom all over the internet. And then to have people like me, little old me, being like, that is gaudy as all get out and ugly as shite. Because I'm like, what are we thinking here? You know? And she said, Melanie was like, I am sure there was tears shed over that. And I was like, I am a horrible person. Yeah.
I know. I specifically did not make any videos about the house sale other than talking about the realtor, something the realtor said. But like, yeah, it's not my cup of tea, you know, but I'm also kind of like, but I don't know if what I do is anyone's cup of tea, right? Like she's got the purple and it's, you know, you kind of like smacked in the face with purple, but anybody could come into my house and say the same about the color red.
Yeah.
You know, because I remember my sons talking to each other one day and they were talking about favorite colors. And one of them was like, I don't know what mom's favorite color is. What's mom's favorite color? My other son was like, hello, you know, everywhere you look, there's red accents, you know? So, but when I first was making Sister Wives videos, I don't think it was until last year that I even made an angry video about Robin, and it was a moneymaker, I'll tell you what. But like before that, you know, I was trying so hard to help people understand, you know, how the religion impacts things that she says and things that she does. You know, times when I thought people were being unfair. So for instance, I didn't think that the stretch marks comment was her trying to put them down. You know, like she said, Cody has been okay. Like he's never, I think it's her trying to say, no, Cody was a good husband. Like a lot of husbands are crappy about that.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then I would get a lot of angry comments on those videos. Anytime I tried to say anything nice about Robin, and I told my husband, I was like, I can make a lot of money just saying nice things about Robin, you know, like, and I don't want to be a rage baiter or anything like that. But it's like, no, I make the videos saying what I really believe. And then just about last season, I just couldn't do it. And I was just like, Robin,
She drives
so
me
hard.
crazy. She drives me crazy. And part of it is the lack. This is one of these things. And maybe it's a me thing, but the way she doesn't look at the camera, the constant up like this or closing her eyes and talking, I'm like, open your eyes. Like it just drives me nuts. And I did a video the other day saying, I want my body language experts, please weigh in on this. Like to me, it looks dishonest. It looks like when you're avoiding eye contact that bad, what are you hiding? You know, she tries to say she's shy. I don't buy that one. I don't buy that one at all. Maybe she's an introvert, but shy. Well,
I know that is so strange to me. The sudden, like Cody said it in one of his cameos. Oh, she's shy. And it's like, like over and over and over, you're like, Cody, you know, this is all on film, right? Like we can all.
Yeah, he does it. He rewrites history a lot. A lot.
Somebody said that red makes you, let me scroll down, like red psychology makes you want to eat. It's why red is a color. And, you know, maybe there's something to that because my father is Italian. And so, and I feel like that my Italian heritage is everybody eat, let me cook for you. You know, like you're going to be in my home, you're going to get fed. So maybe some of my red is like getting people to not fight me on that. You know, like you're here at dinner time, sit down and have some dinner. I don't know. But yeah, the rewriting history is so strange. And I don't know. Like, there are different, maybe she's shy in a way, but it was like the thing that you always think about in early seasons is like, why is it Robin always being the spokesperson for polygamy when this is her first polygamous relationship? You know, like she's speaking up so much. And I don't want to be like, people have a right to speak up, right? And especially like we will act as if women are talking too much when they're not even talking as much as men, right? So it's like, I understand there could be a little bit of internalized misogyny, but really it's just, there are 3 other women there who actually have been doing this for over a decade, some of them 2 decades. Like she didn't seem shy.
No.
Talking heads.
No. And I get frustrated with her too because she makes excuses for Cody. Even on the one-on-ones when he's not there. You know, when the topic came up about him reaching out to his children, and she immediately is like, well, they don't try to call him. And I'm like, why are you excusing this behavior? Like she always is trying to like make it like, okay, his bad behavior. And I just want to be like, stop it. Just stop it. Quit making excuses for him. And then he just like the whole sneak peek that we saw with Mary. I literally watched that and went back and rewatched the entire sneak peek because I thought, I have to be misunderstanding something. There's no way this man is standing there saying all this stuff about him and Mary's relationship when one of the very first episodes, he's taken her to Mexico and talking about doing infertility treatments with her because he loves her so much and has so much passion for her and all the things. And I'm like, you know, we can still watch that. Like it's still out there. And he just makes up a whole different narrative and then kind of takes the approach that if I say it enough times, it becomes true.
Yeah. And I want to point out a comment that's there right now. It's like, maybe she's shy from being judged so bad. And I think that's definitely something, you know, it's like she was, you know, they were active on social media and then pulled back, you know, because of just so many bad comments or, you know, judgmental comments. And so I do absolutely think that it's possible that she's pulled back her personality, or she's, you know, she's been kind of the villain, you know, or put out as the villain of this show. And there are times somebody else had commented that they feel like sometimes that Robin gets punished for things that Cody does, the things that get attributed to her, actually Cody. And I definitely have seen that happen.
Yeah.
So I do think that's a possibility. But I made a video last season about how kind of normal it is for divorced people to kind of rewrite history in their heads, you know, because you're just got to find a way to make this make sense, because divorce doesn't make sense to your brain. You're fully attached to that person a lot of the time, and then it can feel really scary. And I talked about like how my husband and I went to the Top of the World restaurant in Las Vegas at the top of the Stratosphere last year. And I had gone there with my ex-husband, like, and it was crazy. I was like, oh, literally 20 years between the two visits, you know, 2003 and 2023. And I remember like this thought coming into my head, like I told my, you know, current husband, like, I'm so glad we got to do this. And the words that almost came out of my mouth were like, so that this could actually be a happy place. Like I could actually have a good experience. And then I just had to stop and go, this was a happy place in that first marriage. It was our 8th anniversary. We were in a good place. This was, you know, fanciest dinner we'd ever had, you know, like crazy, like getting dressed up and all this stuff. And so it's like, I didn't need to redeem that memory, but there was that person in me who had to think that must have been a bad memory.
Because
you know,
that person.
Right. And it wasn't, you know, I can't go back. Like I could go back and say, oh gosh, every moment of my first marriage was awful. And it just wasn't, you know, and in fact, like we were very close, very in love. Like we had a good marriage until the very end when everything went bad. And, you know, and it was, I had friends saying like, I've never been so shaken up by someone's divorce, but you and Aaron getting divorced. And I think some of that was like, as things started to go bad, I wasn't telling anyone. And I can see what Robin is doing. Like I was acting as if everything was perfect. I was creating a picture of him that was not the correct picture of him, you know, but it's, you know, when I called my mom to tell her I was getting divorced and I needed money for a lawyer, you know, like, and I said to her, and she was, you know, devastated for me and, you know, she had my back, but I told her, I said, okay, well, anytime you're ready, go ahead and say, I told you so, because she was not happy that I got married as young as I didn't really like who I was getting married to. You know, she had a lot of misgivings. She was very vocal about it. And she said, that's not how it works. Like, I don't get to say, I told you so. She said, you created a family. You had 10 years of this marriage. You had a happy marriage. I was wrong about this. She goes, you don't go back in time and say it was all a mistake just because now things are different.
What a wise mom you have.
I know. I'll tell that story because I'm just like, that is one of the best. That was a classy moment for her, because she so could have said it. She so could have said, gosh, if you'd listened to me, kid.
Well, and I don't even know that I would have thought of that. That's a very therapeutic way to look at things.
Right. Yeah. It's just like, you make decisions and then you make more decisions and then you make more decisions. It doesn't mean that you go back in time and like eviscerate the self that you were 10 years ago, you know? And then the other big thing was when I decided, when my husband and I were like talking about maybe dating, and we were just very close friends and we'd known each other for years and years and years. And I was terrified. And I asked my mom, I was like, how the hell did you get remarried? Like, how did you decide to do that? You know? And in her case, like it was infidelity. That's why my father was excommunicated. Like, you know, he cheated on her with her best friend. It was awful.
It's awful.
And I'm like, how after that could you ever trust someone again?
Yeah.
Enough to get married. And she just said, love is risk, Sarah. You can't love without the risk, and you do your best. And, you know, and at that point, they'd been married probably over 20 years at that point. You know, they've been married for 36 years now. But it was just, you know, and I think you see that in like Christine, you know, the having to take the risk of dating again. And, being, and last season, like, it was devastating to hear her say that she didn't, what if I'm not a good kisser? What if I'm not beautiful? Like, and to just be like, oh my gosh, woman, you know? Yeah. And it's so sad that how her confidence was stripped away from her to the point where she didn't know if she had anything of value to give. And that just sucked.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, in all fairness, Cody said some horrible things to her, and very publicly said them. I think you would have to have the confidence of Gibraltar to not take a hit on your confidence with some of the things that he has said. And, you know, I have been known to be a little hard on Christine more so recently for not like moving past it. Like the nacho thing, you know, she keeps doing the nacho family. It was funny the first time. And then I'm like, okay, get a new joke. And people came for me hard. They were like, that is trauma for her and she's processing it. And I'm like, I recognize that. Just get a new joke, you know. But I do think you're probably right. I mean, she clearly is rebuilding her sense of self. And that's a beautiful thing to see. I mean, to see her now be confident and happy in who she is as a person. And, you know, if I'm honest, I would love to see that for Robin. Part of what I think drives me crazy about Robin, and this is what drove me crazy about Mary. I'm just going to say it. Mary drove me crazy because he just kept telling her without telling her to leave, because as the man, he was never going to leave. And that question comes up a lot, and maybe you can answer this, but that if that's against the religion, right, for the man to leave?
Yeah, Punk Rock Polygamist has said that yes. Like, I tagged him in a video saying, "Can you know?" And I said, "I'll go look too." But he says, "No, that is the case. The men are not supposed to come and ask for a divorce. You know, the women can, but the men aren't supposed to." And I'm like, okay. I try to remember that that's true, and also still go, man up, Cody. Like, stop being a whiny baby and take control of your life.
Right. Well, I wish he would have said to Mary, like, when I gained respect for Mary was at the picnic table scene where they asked her at the one-on-one about that scene being uncomfortable. And you can see her square her shoulders back and sit up straight and say, no. He was saying those comments to everyone else, to the cameraman, to his other wives, to Robin, but he wouldn't say them to me. And I was bound and determined in that conversation to make him say it to my face on camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm here for that. And I think that's where, like, he didn't need to tell her to leave, but I would have had a lot more respect for him if he had gone to her years ago instead of leading her on and saying, Mary, look, I'm not in love with you. Mm-hmm. I am more than happy to continue to support you. You are part of this family. You're welcome to be part of this family, but please know there's never going to be a romantic relationship between you and I. We can be friends, but that's all it's going to be. And then let her do with that information what she wanted to, whether she stayed or left. Mm-hmm. But it's the fact that he was really living this double life with her.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and it's interesting. There's a comment, someone saying, you know, he's only religious when it's convenient, because it's like, he's mad at her for going to the elders to get a release, but he's also saying, I can't ask you. So it's like, are you in the church or are you not in the church? Do you believe this or do you not believe this? Because if you don't believe the church is true, then you absolutely could have said, I'm not married to you anymore.
Exactly.
You know?
I was so, that last snippet that we just saw where he was so mad at her for going. I did the same thing. I was like, I can't make sense of this in my head. Like, yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm interested too in the scene that we just saw between Janelle and Maddie. I don't know. The rumors that I've heard is that Maddie has kind of cut her relationship with him due to him, the way he comes in and out of their lives. And I think that's the only thing Cody knows. As a polygamous father, that's what he always did with his own children. Was I come in and then I leave, and I come in and I leave, and because he always got to set that schedule. He was the one that got decided where I was when. He was kind of in control of his own time, as much as he likes to say he wasn't. He was.
Yeah.
And that Maddie has kind of set that and said, no, you're not going to do that to my children. You're either going to be a grandfather or you're not going to be in their lives. But I thought it was very telling with what she didn't say in that scene when Janelle starts talking about Cody passed and they turn to Maddie's face. That right there. I was like, oh, that speaks volumes.
Yeah, somebody said like she's become the Jim Halpert of the show, like in The Office, where she just and it and it makes me think that like where he was obviously when he said I'm not going to talk about Maddie, you could see that like there's a wound. He got hurt. Or he's angry, and she, if you watch the whole show, like she doesn't hold back on her opinions. Like she's a pretty outspoken person. And it's, it's very possible that she didn't just say, you have to be consistent as a grandfather. She might've just said, you don't get to talk to my mom that way. You don't get to treat my brothers that way, line in the sand kind of a thing. And it makes me sad too, because they were so close. And, and I'm like, there's a part of me going, well, too bad, Cody, you messed it up. But I'm still sad because it's like, even if she's saying, like, this is my line in the sand, that had to be hard for her too. That's not an easy thing, and people will be in my office who have all sorts of good reasons to go no contact. And it's not an easy thing to do ever. It's painful. And I think there's a part of me that's just like wanting to grab Cody and shake him and say, fix this, and we've had some commenters kind of talking about Garrison's passing, and one that was talking about, being a bereaved parent themselves. And that's me, I've lost my son, and this is a hard season to watch. Like there's almost like fear of, are we going to see Garrison's face? Like, can I handle it if we do? How, and in my clip, my clip video that I just made, talking about like, oh, and he's so good at movie, or I said, oh, at least he works collaboratively, and then showing all these videos all these clips where he's just bossing people around. And if that tragedy hadn't happened, 100% the Russian soldiers killing the sergeants clip would have been in there. Garrison just being a little snot to dad in the most hilarious way. Yeah. And then Gabe's face, Gabe just like, did this just happen? Like, it's this amazing moment in this show. And I did not put it in to my video because it was heartbreaking. Like, I'm like, I can't do it. And so it's like, and it's hard because we are watching a Cody who doesn't know that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so then, we're all, I feel like in my mind, in my heart, I'm like begging him, like, fix this, as if we could change what happened, and we can't.
Right. Change the past. Well, and I think that Cody, part of me, I think we forget sometimes there was a lot of sympathy thrown at Janelle, and I don't know how to say this appropriately. Cody has made a lot of mistakes and gotten a lot of things he deserves, and he loves to paint himself as a victim. But I do think we do have to recognize that was his son too.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does get lost in the shuffle. People will say, as long as Janelle's okay with it. Well, Cody does have an opinion there too. It is also his child. And I will give him that. But he does seem to, a lot of his kids, as they have gotten older, seem to be pulling kind of Maddie's approach of, I'm an adult and these are what the boundaries are going to be. Mm-hmm. And you can, we're not shunning you. We're not talking bad of you. We're just saying these are our boundaries. So you can either work with those or you can stay gone. And Cody seems to like to take the victim mentality of, it's everybody else's fault.
Yeah.
He has no part in it. The wives talk bad about him, all the things. And I really think that he thought, not that we know what other people think, but it comes across like he thought this was going to be his season where the tide was going to turn and people were going to feel so sorry for him and Rob. Yeah. And instead, people were like, you're getting what you deserve, sucker.
Yeah. And I think about, somebody asked what's on my cup. So this says, let's grow together. This one says, slow down, you're doing fine.
What a nice therapy cup.
Yeah. This is, reading can seriously damage your ignorance is this other one, which I got from the little free library that's across the street from me at my neighbor's house. But yeah, and I think about the thing that bothers me is just the way Cody talks about like the FOMO thing. Obviously, that really bothered me. And it was so interesting to me because I'll compare him to my biological father a lot. And it's crazy to me the ways that he makes me appreciate my biological father. Just say like, wow, yeah, you didn't do that. You didn't act that way, and I remember my father saying one time, he was talking to me about, and I think it was 2013, how in 2013, my mom, my second dad, because I was adopted by my stepdad, and then, my siblings, there's 5 of us, we were all there in Texas for their 25th anniversary and a little, on the farm where they live. And it was just so amazing fun. All the grandkids, everybody was there. And my father said he was actually traveling through Texas at that same time, was aware that this was happening and was within an hour of all of us. And of course wasn't going to come, but he just said, it was this crazy realization for him that was the family, that was the group of people, all of his children considered the family, and that he was on the outside of it. And what he didn't do was blame us for his emotions. Like this was spoken about in the context of, I really screwed up, like you have this wonderful family that I'm not a part of because of choices that I made.
Right.
And I remember like feeling a little sad, but also feeling like, well, yeah, like that's the person I call my dad. I'll say father because biologically that is the truth. But my dad is that man in Texas, and so it's like, I understand the dynamic that Cody is talking about because I saw it play out in my family. I don't understand the blame. I don't understand him acting as if someone's trying to punish him, because I think, gosh, we were there to celebrate something beautiful and have a lot of fun on the farm and wear our little t-shirts that my mom made with all our little colors because she color coded us as kids. So my family, we were all in blue because that was my color. And it was the cutest thing because it was like a marquee of a Broadway show because my maiden name is Broadway. And so it was like 25 years on Broadway. It's just so cute. But it's like, that had nothing to do with my father. That was us having a beautiful moment as a family, and nobody was doing it to exclude him or to hurt him. He has the opportunity to create the same thing on the other side if he had chosen to do so. Yeah. And
and even with Christine and Janelle now being so close, and they weren't before, he's not wrong. He has openly said it bothers him that they're so close now. And, why didn't they put that effort in when they were in the family? Well, because, Cody, you were stirring the pot and keeping all the wives away from each other. Mm-hmm. And now he sees them being together and their kids all being so close as somehow attacking him. And I'm like, no, dude, they've just built this beautiful thing over here because they've worked hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had the hard conversations. Janelle and Christine both have had to forgive each other and let some things go and work to get to where they are. Mm-hmm. And all Cody sees is how it reflects on him. Like,
Yeah. And I don't know, how many divorced people he knows, but like, it's a pretty normal thing for a man to have multiple ex-wives who all become friends with each other, that not polygamous, right? And I think about my mom and that best friend who became my stepmom, who is a absolute wonderful human being. And I just want to say that, I want to throw that out there. She is a gem. I love this woman, but she and my mom patched things up in 2017 after a different divorce happened, and they are friends now, and they, and it's just like
in common.
Yeah, that's what, it's like, there's not that thing in between them anymore. And, I sat listening to them. I was like, my older sister graduated from college, and I'm sitting listening to them just compare notes, and talk about the worst parts of their relationships with my father, and talk about life after, talk about relationships after. And it's just like, this is just a normal thing. These two have something in common, maybe trauma bond.
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, these two are ex-wives of Cody Brown. They happen to be married to him at the same time. But yeah, it's not unheard of.
No. Well, and I think too, a lot of people know this is something that Melanie and I talked about. And I think punk rock polygamist Lady A and I had this conversation too. That what's so interesting about Cody is when he's going back and talking to other men who are in polygamy and in the AUB, we're all looking at it saying, when is he going to have this realization? When is he going to look in and, do the hard work and realize that maybe he's the problem, and both of those women were like, that's not going to happen, because the verbal affirmation that he is getting is from men who are within that community who are encouraging his patriarchal mentality.
Yeah.
So when he's getting all that input from them, telling him this, you have to do this and you have to do, he doesn't understand why we all don't understand,
Right.
And it's like, makes my head hurt if I think about it too much.
Yeah, someone said they wish they could talk to their ex's second ex, and I had that experience, and I think about, and she and I really struggled, and I ended up having to just say to my ex-husband, like, I will not have any interaction with her at all. If we're going to talk about our children, it will be between you and me, and I will not be
until she divorced him, right?
Until she divorced him. And then I got this message on Facebook that she was up here in the Salt Lake City area at Primary Children's, and that her brand new baby had a heart condition. He'd been life lighted up, and she was feeling alone. And, my oldest had a heart condition, had been in Primary Children's. I'd had that experience. And she said, basically she and my ex were pretty much through at that point, that she was feeling very alone. And she just said, you have literally no reason to talk to me at all. Like, I understand that, but if you could find it in your heart to come, I would to talk to you. And I remember going online to a bunch of my friends in a message board going, what the heck do I do? And it was a Mormon mommy message board, because I was still LDS at the time. And they were, it was like, what would Jesus do? Kind of a response. And I went, okay, I'm going to drive out there. And I found myself, now I was on an interstate, I wasn't driving down like city streets, but I'm on I-215 to get to Primary Children's Medical Center. And I saw that I was driving like 95 miles an hour. And I was like, what am I doing? But it was like, oh my gosh, I'm so ready to heal that I can't get there fast enough.
Oh, that's beautiful, though.
Yeah. And then we sat down, and, and she just said, all of these attacks on you, like every time I attacked you, she said, I was never actually mad at you. I was mad at him. And I was angry about the way that my marriage was going, and I couldn't face it. And so you became the enemy that was easier to fight with, you know? And she's like, I was just so deeply unhappy, and I didn't know how to just say, I got to get out of this marriage. So let me just blame you for all of my problems. And, you know, and it makes a lot of sense that can happen. But it's like, you know, if there were problems between any of these wives, and some of it was, I'm really unhappy in this arrangement, and they're not in the arrangement anymore, then, you know, they get along. You know?
Right. I think it's really cool that they get along. I am interested to see how long it takes for Mary, and I think it's starting to happen, to see some of Robin's manipulative behavior.
I think she kind of already, I feel at the end of last season, she kind of called her out, at least in Talking Heads, about just the stop telling me there's a chance, stop telling me to stay.
Yeah.
Because, you know, through all of that, it wasn't just Cody giving mixed messages. It was Robin begging her and saying, no, I know that he doesn't really feel this way. And if Robin's the one that gets the most connection with Cody, then why wouldn't Mary believe that maybe Cody has said something that I don't know, you know?
Well, and I think Robin wanted Mary to stay for her own reasons that had nothing to do with, I mean, she was a really crappy best friend. Like, if you're going to be somebody's best friend and you know their marriage is crap, then be their best friend and say, like, this is not good for you. Like, I know you love him, but this is not good for you. And Robin was not that friend. She was like, but I don't want to be here alone, so please don't leave. Like, again, made it all about her and what was good for her, which
really is why I'm like, oh, seeing these friends of Mary's just tell her like it is and have her back, and it's just like, oh gosh, thank you. That's
so refreshing.
That's what you need. And Brandy, who's in this first episode this season, like actually reached out to me after I did the video. Like, I think I found her. I think it's this person. And she actually DM'd me, and she's like, Mary sent me this. It's so funny. It is, you know, confirmed that it was her. and then I think she's following me now. But
that's
you know,
so cool.
And it's just, but it's like, that's you. I think women, for sure, women need women.
Absolutely.
Who are gonna maybe sometimes, you know, just be very blunt with us and say. And I just remember senior year of high school, one of my friends, you know, she just sat me down, looked me in the eye, and just said, I don't like this relationship you're in. I don't like the way this guy is treating you. I don't think it's okay. I don't think he should be, you know, and if you want a little Mormon weirdness, he was a return missionary, you know, so he'd come home from his mission, but he had a girl he was interested who was on a mission, and he intended to marry her when she came home. And he flat out told me, but I can have fun with you until then. And I thought that was fine.
Oh,
and you know, like, I mean, it hurt, but at the same time, it's just kind of like, well, people say they're going to wait for a missionary all the time, and then they don't, you know, like then they fall in love and they get married to somebody else. And so I thought maybe that'll happen to me. And, you know,
tell me your friend set you straight.
Well, she kind of did. I remember lying straight to her face. You know, she came up, sat down I was talking with a different friend, and she's like, hey, what are you guys talking about? And I had been talking about that guy, and I didn't want her to know that I was still dating him. And so I just rattled off a lie, and she's like, oh, okay. And then she goes to, you know, turn in some paper or something. And my other friend, she's like, that was a little scary, Sarah, how easily you found a lie. Like, that's scary. And I was sitting here going, and why? Why am I lying to Dalila, who is wonderful and has my best interest? Like, she's,
that was your real question right there. You were lying because you knew. You know. Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, I didn't marry that guy. Married his cousin. So that's a little weird. But anyway, but, you know, the idea of like, and then my mom just like, I remember her, one of the reasons that one of the things that was hard for her about my first husband was that he hadn't gone on a mission. you know, because he didn't really know if he believed the church was true at that point. So he said, I'm not going to go tell people to join a church I don't believe is true. I don't think that's respectful. And so he joined the military instead, you know, but she just was like, well, what about, I mean, you've always wanted to date, you know, marry a returned missionary. And I was just like, let me tell you about the returned missionary and how he treated me. You know, that is how this guy treated me that you think is so great. It's not, you know, like trying to help her understand, like that can't be the only criteria or even the most important one.
I've always said I would rather have somebody come talk to me and be blunt. I don't like this about you. Even on my page, I've said it's not going to hurt my feelings any. I would rather hear that. I will take the information, evaluate it myself. If there's truth in it, be like, you know what? There might be some truth in that, and I might need to work on that. Mm-hmm. And if there isn't, I will politely disregard it and move on with my day. I would much rather have that than passive aggressive. Mm-hmm. I don't do passive aggressive well. And I think that that's part of, you know, on my page, we've been talking about this thing about forgiving versus being snarky. Christine this season, and I know it's 2 years behind, but she had already been out of the relationship a year. And there's scenes where she's being very snarky and kind of, you know,
yeah.
And, you know, I brought up the point in one of my videos of where is that line of saying, I'm going to set a boundary up. This is my boundary, but I don't need to be mean either. I can move on, because if I hold on to that need to be snarky, and then that's going to affect me in allowing me to be bitter and angry and all those things. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people came at me and were like, no, she was in that marriage for 30 years. She gets to be snarky for 30 years. And I'm like, well, you know, I don't know. I've never been in that relationship, right, but I can say. But
there's a book called Crazy Time. Mm-hmm. It's written by a therapist. My personal therapist, when I was going through my divorce, had me read it. And the whole premise of the book is that you go crazy for 2 years. That it, you know, that people who get divorced go crazy. And they go through all these phases, and like angry phase is a phase, you know. And I remember getting really angry. I was in my angry phase about this book, and I remember sending him this really angry email, my therapist, and, you know, she had like case studies and everything in it. And I just said, you know, and I hate this stupid book you sent me. Like I said, I'm not Joe in New York City, and I'm not Pamela in St. Louis. I am Sarah in St. George, Utah, and I'm me, and I don't have to be like, you know, even though I was going through all those phases. Yeah. Like, I think the only phase I didn't go through was the sexual butterfly phase, because sexual hummingbird phase, where you go out and have a lot of sex, basically. And I'm like, yeah, because I was Mormon and we don't do that, you know, but it's like, okay, whenever I see people will look down on someone like, oh, come on, just grow up and be, you know, don't be snarky. And, you know, why can't she go and talk to Cody at this party? And it's just kind of like, well, are they in the crazy time? You know, is it, maybe it's part of that. You know, people will have an angry phase, or people will have a, you know, and for her, it could be, I mean, I will always, always, always go back to the fact that she went to New Jersey with her daughter for spine surgery by herself. And I'm like, do you need to be friendly with someone who doesn't stand by his daughter for spine surgery? I don't know if you need to be friendly.
Well, and I tried to clarify. I said, I think part of it too was I was using the word forgive, and people thought I meant by that forget. Like, forgive him and then we're good again. That's not what I meant. What I meant was, she can set a boundary and say, I don't have any desire to go talk to him. If he's there, we can stay at opposite ends of the room, and that's fine. But I'm not going to harbor that resentment inside of me towards him.
Right.
Because that's going to do me harm. And that's what I meant by forgive, is being like, we all saw what he did. That was a really shitty thing. And there's no getting around that. It was crap. And she's valid for having very strong feelings about that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I don't think you feed those feelings.
Right. And being the child of divorce and, and a divorced person, but like, I know that I'm aware of how uncomfortable it is for my parents to be in the same room, and they do a good job. And they try and, that I understand that they're not ever going to be friends, that that's just not in the cards for them. And at the same time, like I'm thinking about, the last time I think I was with my mom and my biological father together was when my son passed. Obviously they both were here for that. And my sisters, for whatever, for better or for worse, they decided that they needed to whisk me off to see the Christmas lights in Salt Lake City and get my mind off things, which was never going to happen. Right. But like, and so here we are kind of as a family getting on the train and doing, all this stuff. And there was this moment where we were talking about flossing, the dance flossing was big in 2018. And I was trying to show my mom how to do it. And she said, Michael, turn around. Like, I won't do it if you're watching, and like, and we all could kind of understand that, you don't want your ex-husband to watch you try out a dance, and we all kind of laughed. But then he put his phone up so that he could see her, but she saw that he was doing that. And it was this kind of fun moment in the middle of terribleness of look at them being a little bit playful. Like that was kind of fun, but that was, they divorced in like 86. So this is 2018 and just kind of going, all right, we're all going to do our best. And I guess I hope that, like what I see them both doing is they both came because Mykelti wanted them there. Yeah. And that is them.
That is something.
Yeah. Both setting aside, and then they came and they didn't make a big scene or didn't sit and snipe at each other, and there are people who can watch and go, well, they should have been at least civil, like, or, said hello, chatted for a second. And maybe we don't know if Mykelti is angry at them for not, or if Mykelti is relieved that they were both there and stayed on opposite ends of the room. Yeah. It's just after divorce, things are weird,
My favorite was somebody said in my comment section, the scene where Cody is there at the table and Christine is here and Mykelti has the knife and she's like this. No one took the opportunity that moment to do the knife to the kidney. Like everybody missed it.
Flagstaff, someone asked how far away Flagstaff is from St. George. It is like between 4 and 5 hours. Depending on how fast you drive. Or which route you take. Because there are a couple of, there's like the pretty route and then the faster route. So if you ever have the chance to take the gorgeous, like scenic 89 route between St. George and Flagstaff, it's amazing. It's gorgeous. But
listen, I really appreciate you doing this. It has been a lot of fun, but I have to jump off.
Yeah, I have a session that I got to drive to. I'm only 10 minutes away from their house, but I've got a client having his very last in-home session because he's switching over to my new agency.
Are you still working double time?
Yeah, I'm like slowly getting people either moved over or finished up. And so he's the last kid that hasn't moved over. But yeah, we're going to go make some double chocolate zucchini bread for his session because he earned it. So
nice. Nice. What a fun therapy session.
Excited about it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing this. And I enjoy your page very much. If you guys aren't following Sarah, go follow Sarah. She is a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun talking about Sister Wives and all Cody's crap.
Yes. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for asking me to do this.
Enjoy your afternoon, and I will see you soon.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.